yeah. So you can start this.
Yeah. Good afternoon, all. On behalf of IAPS Seminar Organizing Committee, I take this opportunity to welcome you all to this session. So this is the first session. Name of this session is Health Care Utilization. Our chairperson is Professor K. Anil Kumar. Professor Anil Kumar is Professor and Dean of School of Health System Studies and Chairperson of the Center for Hospital Management, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Professor Anil Kumar is a distinguished researcher in the field of demography, migration, and urban health, as well as child, adolescent health, and reproductive health. On behalf of the organizing committee, I welcome you, sir, for this session. The discussion of this session is Dr. T.R. Dilip. He's Associate Professor, Department of Mathematical Demography and Statistics, IAPS. His research areas mainly focus on non-communicable diseases, health system, and health finance. I welcome you to this session, Dr. Dilip. I also would like to welcome Dr. Sarang Padgongar. He's the rapporteur of this session. He's faculty in IAPS. I welcome all participants and attendees. Now I request Professor Anil Kumar to chair the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rashmi. A very good afternoon to all the panelists and participants. Discussant Dr. Dilip, facilitator Dr. Rashmi.
Yes, sir.
So we are now having this session on healthcare utilization during the pandemic COVID-19. We have Dr. Dilip as a discussant with us and Dr. Rashmi to facilitate the session. And before the session begins, let me congratulate IAPS for organizing this important conference. And there are several sessions and several papers of high quality can be seen in the program schedule. And in the pandemic, it is good to see that researchers have not been idle. Rather than probably this is one of the conferences where so many papers are of high quality papers are being presented, which is a good sign that we are actually working even in difficult times. Under the theme of healthcare utilization is also organized in past two sessions. So we are having the first session today, so I congratulate the IAPS for organizing the conference and also the conference organizers, Professor James, Professor Saidunisa, and other organizing committee members, and Dr. Rashmi for inviting me to chair the session. We have 5 highly relevant papers which will be presented today. And given the time constraint, it is already 2:15 now. So what we will do is that we will give 10 minutes to each presenter. So let me introduce briefly each of the paper presenters of the session. The first paper presenter is Dr. Shankara Pandyan from Health Family Welfare Training Center, GARH and Family Welfare Training Center. Will be speaking on effect of COVID-19 pandemic on the utilization of public healthcare services in Tamil Nadu. The second paper is on measuring health system resilience in India in the context of COVID-19 by William Joe, Assistant Professor of IEG, Delhi. Third is on the management perspective of COVID-19 patients from L1 till L3 level, a prospective observational study. The fourth one is again focusing on primary health centers as the pivots of pandemic mitigation, a case study of Mohalla clinics in NCT Delhi by Sonali Smriti Bishwas. The management perspective paper was will be from Dr. Anand Bihari from a government medical college, Asamgarh. The fifth paper is on bacterial isolation from respiratory samples during SARS-CoV-2 pandemic by Satendra Saraswat, who is from Department of Microbiology, UPUM Sitaba. So I sincerely welcome all the paper presenters for this session, and I also invite the first paper presenter, Dr. Shankara Pandyan, to present the paper on effect of COVID-19 pandemic on the utilization of public healthcare services in Tamil Nadu. And please begin the presentation, and please stick to the time limit of 10 minutes so that you will be able to wind up the session by 3:30. Thank you.
Okay, sir. So we may be allowed to share our screen, sir.
Yeah, I think the host will have to do that.
So our institute, we conducted this study, effect of COVID-19 pandemic on the utilization of public health care services in Tamil Nadu. And so we know about the pandemic. It is a large-scale outbreak of infectious diseases with greater intensity of fatality. This, apart from affecting economic, social, political scenario, caused disruption of healthcare services during the lockdown period in India, and as well as in the world and India as well. So we reviewed there are a number of resources available, literatures available, papers available that confirms this. And as especially in India, we have a very short of prescription of doctors and nurses, and a very low 1 doctor per 1,445 against the norm of 1 per 1,000 by WHO. Similarly, nurses lacking, and many states are having very low bed occupancy rate or bed rates, and especially Bihar, Odisha, Manipur, etc. Okay, in this situation, we face a lot of problem due to the disruption of activities and due to more cases, case load. So there are many papers, as I already told. The Anupama Joshi, she has reported that the health programs have been sidelined, and there is one study by Hema et al. Etc. Due to the lack of unavailability of public transport system, closure of many health facilities, the health services are affected. Similarly, another by Hema, and during lockdown period, the obesity and weight gain also is going to pose a greater difficulty with regard to this COVID spread. Okay. So the objective is to assess the utilization level, whether it is affected or not, and the ways to suggest ways to tackle such situation in future. So methodology is actually it's a cross-section study. So it is a descriptive study collected for the months of January to June. Actually we divided into two, up to March one group, and April, May, June as another group, so that we can compare the reduction or gain in the public health services utility. And we actually selected a convenience sample of DC hospital, one DC hospital, that is Dindigul, and two each of all, that is sub-DC hospitals, CHCs, PSCs, UPSCs, and 6 sub-centers we selected. So this period, January to June, we covered for data collection. It's a primary data collected by our staff of PRC. The findings. So certain things we could see that it is affected, and this is as far as this IPD, OPD services are concerned, generally affected in all the public health institutions as well as district health headquarter hospital. And you can see that from January to so almost April, it is a downtrend. Afterwards, it is increasing. And as far as deliveries are concerned, other things are actually decreased and increased. No? As far as deliveries are concerned, it was increasing from April. in the district headquarters hospitals. This is because of more say referral from the lower primary and secondary health institutions. So this is Ayush. Even in district hospitals, other services are affected. The Ayush, the services affected. Number of patients reported less. And the imaging services also affected. This is because of the other transport facilities unavailability and other things. Apart from that, the technicians were deputed to the COVID camps for identification and referral. That's why the imaging services also affected in the district headquarters hospital. And OPD services generally affected in all the health institutions. And so it was declining up to say April, and after that, afterwards it was increasing. IPD services generally we could not say, and but separately we studied for PSC and other the lower hospitals where it is affected. Delivery is conducted at public health facilities. This is apart from district headquarters hospital. It seems that there is a certain decrease, and it is actually increasing from March. Okay. So there was a lull up to March. Afterwards, it started increasing, and there is some fluctuations. We could not reach any conclusion as far as this is concerned. So, and we studied all the services, taking 23 indicators, and we could see that there are differences between before and after. And we could see that especially that serial number 4, 5, 12, 18, and 19, there the services are less during the April, May, June, and more during January, February, March. Okay. So compared with January, February, March, it is less. That is for ANC clinics, all the OPD, IPD, and the clinics attendance, ANC clinics, delivery clinics, everywhere the services were affected. And others, there is no such, it is not affected, but you can see that it is more compared to these activities. The conclusion, you could see that in the PSC subcenters everywhere, the health services were not affected in general, but delayed the immunization. Instead of giving 1.5 months for you say pentavalent, etc., the mothers delayed getting the such services. And the IPD OPD case already I told you it is affected everywhere in all the institutions, especially district headquarters hospitals. Delivery cases are found increased due to the referrals from the lower health institutions. Health and allied services such as laboratory services already shown the picture where it is affected because of the deputation of the technicians from the district hospitals to CAMS, COVID CAMS. And one more thing we noted by the verbal responses from all the health staff that record maintenance and reporting of health services affected. Because of this only, we could not collect data after June, that is July, August, September. The data were incomplete, so we could not rely. That's why we did not collect. So this is these are the conclusions. And when we compared with other studies also, we could see such things. There is one BMJ study where the maternal neonatal services affected and more stillbirth and neonatal mortality. So that's what reported by one BMJ journal. And the one study in Asia, it also reported the same, that health services affected, and effect of COVID in South Asia reported by UNICEF that the saw drops, the services drops in preventive and curative services. In Indian scenario, the Chawra Sehgal also reported such findings. And one study, the United Nations also reported that all the, especially the low income and middle income countries, there the impact is more. So these are the findings we have found from our primary data collected from these institutions. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, and thank you also for keeping the time. It is, you have
Yes,
actually
sir. Yes,
took only 8 minutes, so that is, thank you very much for that. Now, I think we will have that, we'll take the questions together. We'll have the presentations first. And I think the participants can put the questions in the chat box. And I think the session facilitators will let us know the questions. And towards the end of the session, we will have the questions together and we'll see how we can respond to that. So what
okay, sir.
now I will invite Dr. William Joe to present on the present on his paper on measuring health system resilience in the time of COVID-19. Dr. William Joe.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I hope the slides are visible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you to IITF for shortlisting this paper for presentation in this conference. The paper which I will be presenting is titled as Measuring Health System Resilience in India in the Context of COVID-19 Pandemic. This is a work co-authored with Abhishek and Narendra Patel. So broadly, as we understand, the idea of resilience has been gaining some research prominence in recent years. This actually started with the context of Ebola epidemic, when the health systems in Africa, they were like totally under severe pressure, and it was failing to check the spread of the virus. And also it affected delivery of various other health services. But the concept of resilience as such is not new, and it has been discussed, I think, considerably in the context of environment and ecological systems. But in the context of health systems, I think mainly a lot of papers have looked at how systems are responding when there are situations like conflicts or civil war type situation across countries. And many evidence is coming from African countries who are struggling with this kind of problems. Some of the studies, I think they are trying to also quantify the idea of resilience and measure it. So this is an area where I think more contributions can come. And in that context only this paper was formulated, because the COVID-19 situation is also a kind of a problem where it is affecting entire health systems altogether. The resilience as such is also a very important term, even in the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals framework. And therefore, any contribution from a methods perspective will also have a wide-ranging applications. So in the so in the Indian context now, the idea of a resilience, and especially looking at it from a COVID perspective, is helpful, because there are many countries who are affected with this and their systems are not able to cope with the problem. Some countries, however, are better. For example, South Korea, Germany, they did better despite going through this problem. But the Indian health system is very peculiar. It has already gone through a lot of stress. And our health workers, they are also burdened, because they are also diverted towards COVID duty, so that their general or other areas of duties are affected, and routine healthcare services are also affected to a large extent. So in this context, we also know that our systems are very different in terms of their capacity and their efficiency of working. But there is no evidence to understand this, and this particular work aims to provide some early insights about how India fared during the initial days of COVID-19 pandemic. In terms of the idea of measuring resilience, I think there are some systematic reviews around the concept itself, and also some papers have provided the methods to do this. Broadly, these reviews define resilience as the capacity of the health system to work normally when faced with a crisis, and to reorganize as per the needs of the system. Now, the idea of resilience can be looked at from many perspectives, like the ability of the system to absorb any shock, such as the COVID-19 shock, or adapt and recover from these shocks, like how quickly they can restore to normalcy. So those kind of ideas can be picked up to quantify and measure resilience. In this particular work, we are trying to explore 2 or 3 approaches to understand resilience. The first is the index-based approach. Here we are trying to look at two different indices. One is the simple normalization type approach, where we pick up a state and the indicator of the state which we want to study, and normalize that against the best performer and the worst performer. So this is a simple human development index type approach. The second approach takes into account the level of the indicator. So in this approach, we are trying to say that achieving a progress of a given value of say 5%, it is more difficult at a higher level than compared to lower level. So accordingly, if a system is going back or doing badly from a lower level, that system should be considered as more poor performing system than compared to a system who is going back from a higher level. So these two approaches we are using. One is the simple unweighted approach, and second is a weighted approach where the levels themselves act as a weight. For the analysis purposes, we are using the data from the health management information system, and the data comes from the Q1 of the financial year. So this will be the period April, May, June, and we are comparing the Q1 of 2019-20 with 2020-21. Altogether, for this particular analysis, we have shortlisted some 15 indicators which fall into 4 broad domains. So like 3 indicators which are related to antenatal care, some 4 indicators related to delivery care and postpartum checkup, 3 indicators related to family planning services, and 5 indicators related to child health. So these indicators from the HMIS are picked up, and we also convert them in terms of percentage by using denominators for the particular target group or like intended target, and based on that we understand the level of coverage or service delivery status for the particular indicator and for a given state. So given we are trying to look at some of the simple descriptive analysis about how the indicators have changed, and then we also try to examine whether some of the econometric methods can be used to understand resilience. So one of the methods which is not commonly applied but can be of good potential is the item response theory based models, where the 2 dimensions where the ability of the state to sustain a level of activity can be an important input to understand resilience. And also the second part is the difficulty associated with the indicator itself, whether that particular indicator is difficult to be sustained in such context. So the IRT has a good potential to be used in this context to measure resilience. So given the backdrop, some quick understanding of the descriptive analysis we are presenting here. So overall, we find that the Q1 of 2019-20 and Q1 of 2020-21, so that is the pandemic period when the country also was under lockdown, we see that all the selected indicators had declined. So it's negative for all the indicators, but for some indicators, the decline was much higher than certain other indicators. So the red highlighted indicators here, for example, ANC registration, distribution of IFA tablets, or having 4 or more ANC checkups, or even conducting institutional deliveries. These are some of the indicators which had very large magnitude decline between Q1 of 2020-21 and 2019-20. So these are the most seriously affected indicators. Also, there are other indicators which are affected. This is an absolute view, but I think a relative view is also important, that, for example, some indicators are already at a lower level, say sterilization and all. So even a small decline there will be much more meaningful. So here, for example, we see that in Q1 sterilization was 5.4%, but in Q1 of like the pandemic year, it declined to 1.5%. So some of the serious services are affected through the pandemic. In this graph, we are showing the trends in terms of what was the status of the services before the COVID-19 lockdown period. So you will see that in most of the graphs towards the end, there is a dip. So it means that there has been a decline which is associated with the COVID-19 lockdown period. In fact, in many cases, you will see that before the lockdown period, the trend was positive. That means that the indicator was improving, but because of the pandemic period, the indicator had declined. And in some cases, some indicators, the decline is even sharper. So for example, full immunization here at the bottom, the decline is very sharp compared to 19 and 20. Similarly, for ANC registration, again, the decline is very sharp from 75% to 56%. So given this, we also reviewed state-wise performance, and we find that mostly the small states, union territories, they had much larger impact in terms of decline. And then I think in terms of preserving the service delivery status, the performance was varied. There is no consistent performer who did well in terms of across indicators in trying to ensure that services are maintained. But I think small states on an average were relatively better off compared to large states. Here we present the index values based on the two approaches. Approach one is the HDI based index calculations, and approach two is the level sensitive index calculation to see the change in coverage between the Q1 of 2019-20 and the Q1 of 2020-21, that is the pandemic year. So we find that states like Punjab, Telangana, Mizoram, Meghalaya, Goa, and Himachal Pradesh, they were relatively better in terms of their service delivery status during the pandemic period than compared to some other major states as well as like small union territories. And importantly, from a methods point of view, both the approaches are providing consistent results and same kind of rankings for the states. What we did was we tried to correlate the indicator level with the number of COVID-19 cases reported for the states. So we noted that overall there is a negative relationship in the sense that states where the COVID-19 cases were more, in those states the service delivery status was more affected. Of course, this is like a very small set of observations, but still we find that there is a negative association, at least for some of the indicators. So this we tried to confirm from a linear regression based association, although none of it was coming out significant, but then overall many of these turned out to be a negative association, but we cannot confirm that for indicator specific it was negative. Overall for the index itself, there is a significant and negative relationship though. Then we also thought that we can also use other parametric based approaches for this. So item response theory is one important area which can be, I think, explored in this context. And the analysis here, we used a single parameter logic model formulation of the IRT. And for that analysis, what we have to do was we classified the indicators in two groups. Group one, where the indicator experienced more than 20 percentage point reduction, and group two, where the indicator did not experience that large reduction. So we divided the states in those two sets of performance, and given that performance, this is an absolute view. We can also take a relative view, but here we have done only the absolute view. And based on that, we apply this IRT model and try to understand which of the services are actually more easier to be affected and which are less likely to be affected. So given the conception of IRT, it also gives us an item characteristic curve, which can be then used to understand how the different indicators have performed during this period. So we find that some of the indicators which were less likely to be affected were spacing and then an ANC checkup, vitamin A dose, and newborn being breastfed in first 1 hour, MTP, pregnancy and sterilization. But this particular approach has one limitation, that this is based on an absolute view. If we will take a relative view, we know that sterilization in relative sense has declined more. So there is some further work here which we are still doing to try and identify which will suit best, I think, absolute or relative version of that we are still figuring out. And based on this method will be further refined for this application. So overall, we noticed that given the situation, Indian states, they definitely vary in terms of their resilience capacity. And it also depended on the COVID cases experienced by those states. So it has also affected some services more than others, especially like ANC, delivery care and immunization was largely affected because of COVID pandemic. And but this is a picture of Q1. The resilience analysis can be further strengthened by looking at the results from Q2 and Q3, because that will show us how quickly the states have bounced back. And given that, I think once the data comes out in public domain, we will be able to share those results as well. But broadly, the intention here was to work on resilience as an important area where I think some methodological contribution can also be done. One important challenge here, however, will be how to aggregate the different indicators of our health system so that we can say that state's health system has done well or not. So these are some of the intricacies which are still like pending, but this is what the analysis which we could do, and we were able to present it here. We also have the entire results here, but
I think we need to now
Yeah.
finish it.
Yeah, thank you, Samal. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you very much for presenting it. Presenting the resilience measurement, health system resilience measurement. It is an interesting area. So now let us move on to the next presentation. Next presentation is by Dr. Anand Bihari. He will be presenting on management perspectives of COVID-19 patients from L1 to L3 level. Dr. Bihari, please.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. Hello, I am audible.
Yes, you are audible.
You are audible. Please go on.
Thank you so much for accepting my paper in IIPS seminar. My topic is management of COVID-19 positive patient in a level 3 hospital, a prospective observational study. Overview of presentation will be background, aims and objective, material and methods, results and conclusion, recommendation, and references. Slide is not moving.
Actually, there is an arrow button. Just move your cursor on the arrow button down below. Just
Okay,
below.
sure.
Just below.
Background. COVID-19 is an COVID-19 is an acronym that stands for Coronavirus Disease of 2019. The name was given by WHO on February 11, 2020 for the disease caused by novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2. And it is an acute respiratory illness characterized by fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath. Some patients may have ache and pains, nasal congestion, runny nose, sore throat, or diarrhea. The incubation period, time between infection and appearance of first sign symptoms of COVID-19 is up to 14 days. COVID-19 affects people of all age groups, but the following are at greater risk for developing severe disease with complications, like elderly people, people having other comorbidities like coronary vascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, respiratory illness, people who are compromised on immunosuppressants drugs, people with HIV. To understand morbidity and mortality at a various age group, the study planned and gave a review of our institution, how we have handled patient in isolation ward with different clinical presentation, which create a data for future references to know the patient behavior and critical with their management. My research question is, what is the pattern of symptomatic and asymptomatic COVID-19 patient in population, and extent it creates morbidity and mortality. This is a study aimed to assess the symptomatic and asymptomatic study of the COVID-19 patient and their management in level 3 level hospital in Eastern Uttar Pradesh. Objectives are to assess the socio-demographic status and assess the pattern of COVID-19 patient in this area. To find out educational and BPL pattern of study subjects. To analyze the various symptoms of COVID-19 patients and mortality and morbidity pattern. Material and methods of this study. A study design prospective observational study in Government Medical College Azamgarh UP on confirmed with COVID-19 tests with since 20 March 2022 till the submission of this research. A study area and duration of this study. The three districts are selected in this study: Azamgarh, Balia, Mau. Critically, patients are admitted in this hospital on the subject of confirmed with COVID-19 test since March 20 till the submission of research. Sample size. Total admitted patient in the research duration 1019 patients. 73% are male and 27% are female. Out of total patients, 61 were referred due to critical illness in higher institution and 40 were shifted to L1 hospital and 796 were discharged in satisfactory condition and 122 were died. Data collection on the basis of oral consent was taken from the all patients. The total number of patients in COVID positive patient admitted in isolation ward after taking throat and nasal swab followed by RT-PCR test. Data analysis process. All the information of admitted patient were tabulated in Excel sheet, which includes their age, sex, symptoms, or asymptomatic. If they are symptomatic, the notice symptoms were fever, cough, sore throat, headache, body ache, chest pain, vomiting, and abdomen pain. The data was incorporated into Excel sheet to SPSS software and analyzed statically. This study was ethically approved by this institution. Result and discussion. The educational status of patient in shows in graph. The less than 5 class 16.22%, 5 to 8 class 5.41, and 8 to 10 class 51.35. The above graph show that most of the patients were less than 10th class, around 55%, were 10th standard, and it was a challenge to make them understand the sensitivity of infection spread. Distribution of patient on the BPL card holder. Approximately 90% patients are not available the BPL card, having not a BPL. Patient on the basis of asymptomatic and symptomatic. Maximum patients are approximately 62% and approximately 38% are symptomatic. Symptomatic patients are distributed in different types of symptoms like fever, cough, sore throat, headache, body ache, chest pain, vomiting, abdomen pain. So in graph, the majority of patients, 61% are asymptomatic. Previously, I saw the graph. Patients were having symptoms presented throat and cough 32%, fever and cough 19%, sore throat, headache and body ache 16%, and throat and chest pain 12%. Vomiting and pain are abdomen pain are 0.06. Maximum patients are reporting with fever and cough and sore throat like this. Above graph combined into and more comorbidity. Admitted versus death. The line diagram admitted patient distribution in previously very rising increases, then maximum patient in admitted in July to October. Similar pattern, the death pattern also shows that in line diagram. Total admitted patient 1019 in 122 patients are dead in my hospital. the patient comorbidity distribution. In single comorbidity, first table shows that, second table shows that double comorbidity, and third table shows that multiple comorbidity. Maximum death in single comorbidity patient 69, then double comorbidity 37, and then after 16% dead in multiple comorbidity. In three tables shows that diabetic mellitus type 2 is a more cause of death in this disease, COVID-19. The management treatment plan shows in this table, like uh, 4 mg BD. In table shows that management part, the distribution of medicine and its schedule. Conclusion of my study is most of the patients were not much literate, and it was a challenge to make them understand and sensitivity of infection spread. The patient who showed symptoms were lesser. Maximum were presented as a sore throat, cough and fever, followed by the other minor symptoms. It was noticed that mortality and morbidity is very less in the ratio of the population of an area in present situation. So if the population cooperates with government guideline and healthcare worker instruction, the situation is still under control. As a new institution in rural area, we have followed all the guidelines and stood at the same platform along with well-occupied and multi-specialty hospital in this COVID-19 pandemic, which is reflected by its upgradation from L1 to L3 hospital. Recommendations. This study finds that most of patient literacy rate was very low, so program and awareness is meant for people. This study brought out pertinent have been addressed in an integrated and comprehensive approach of planning, especially in rural areas. Medical mobile van addressing the health needs of people should be introduced so that they can be treated for minor alignment with their village. There should be a mass campaigning and awareness program so that utilization of mask and social distancing can be improved. The references is like this. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bihari, for your presentation. Let me now
Okay, thank you, sir.
invite, let me now invite Ms. Sonali Bishwas, who will be presenting on PHCs as pivots of pandemic mitigation, a case of Mohalla clinics. Sonali.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, please.
Yes, I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Yes. Um, I'm actually I was unable to join from my laptop, so I'm trying to do it from my phone. I hope screen sharing is possible from the phone.
Yes, it's possible from your phone. Just go to share. Hello.
Yes. Yes.
So on share button, just click and select the file.
Okay. Share content, right?
Yeah,
Share content. Yes, but I'm unable to get the option of the screen. My PPT is already open in the background.
no, but it's means it's open, but share screen one option is there when you click on share content. Hello.
Yes.
So when you will click on the share, so there will be a share content option is there. Okay, so share
Yes.
content and just select your file which is open over there.
I don't know the option. They are not showing.
So you are not able to see that option of share?
I am able to see the share content option.
Okay.
After when I'm clicking on share content, there are multiple options which
Content,
are shown,
yes.
like share screen, whiteboard, box, Google Drive, Microsoft, OneDrive. Like this, they are showing options.
Uh,
I'm not sure whether I'll be able to share screen.
Nikant,
Hello?
Is it
Hello.
possible to email the?
Hello.
Is it possible to email your presentation to
Just I'm
the
dropping my
e-office?
email address in the chat
And
Yes.
option. Just email your file to us.
yeah. So
I'm dropping my email address in the
okay.
chat option. Just email that file to.
Yes,
Your
I'll just. Is it the same email address from which we have received the link of the meeting?
I think he has sent you in the chat the
Okay,
mail ID.
Yes.
It is in the chat. The mail ID is in the chat. Please check.
Okay, yes. I'll just a second. I'll forward my presentation.
Yeah.
चालू झालं का net?
Yes, I've done it, sir. Please check.
Okay. So what do you do? You can actually go ahead with the your presentation without even having the presentation. Let them open it. In the meantime, you can start so that
Yes.
we will not lose time.
Lose time. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry for the inconvenience.
That's okay. So
Okay. Good evening, everybody present here. So today I'm going to speak a little on the primary healthcare centers as the pivots of pandemic mitigation, a case study of the Mohalla clinics in NCT, Delhi. On the 23rd of March 2020, the World Health Organization launched the Pass the Message awareness campaign to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. This campaign promoted 5 key steps for people to follow in order to protect their health, which was in lines with the World Health Organization guidance focused on hand washing, coughing etiquette, not touching your face, physical distance, and staying at home if feeling unwell, all of which could be done at the individual levels. There were also measures which could be adopted at the community and as well as the state level. Since the early days of the pandemic outbreak, apprehensions regarding the preparedness of the existing healthcare infrastructure in India and their ability to respond were being discussed and debated widely. The lockdown period was strategic in order to prepare our existing healthcare infrastructure to deal with the increasing number of infections, which would require hospitalization on a large scale. All the three levels of care, that is primary, secondary, and tertiary, have to work in tandem during this particular health crisis. According to Ghai, 1985, an important component of primary health care is the control of communicable diseases in the community, which is twofold. One is the protection of individuals from the ill effects of communicable diseases, and the second one is the minimization of spread of infection to others. On similar lines, on 7th of September 2020, the World Health Organization emphasized the need to invest in public health care, especially primary care, invest in population-based services for preventing, detecting, and responding to diseases. In Delhi, the Mohalla clinics are basically the primary healthcare centers launched by the Delhi government in 2015. These clinics function mainly in pota cabins or portable cabins or in rented premises. They provide primary healthcare services including doctor consultation, medicines, diagnostic tests, all without any user fee. At present, there are a little less than 500 clinics spread across Delhi, and studies reveal that they have been particularly helpful in enhancing the accessibility and utilization of primary healthcare services in Delhi. On the 7th of April 2020, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare launched 3 types of COVID dedicated facilities for screening the suspected cases and preventing hospitalization. The 3 types of clinics included the COVID care centers to deal with the mild cases. Second were the dedicated COVID health centers to deal with the moderate cases, and dedicated COVID hospitals which would provide comprehensive care to clinically severe cases. Ministry of Health also directed for the setting up of fever clinics in hospitals and community health centers in rural areas where there is adequate space to minimize the risk of cross infections. In urban areas, on the other hand, the civil or the general hospitals, urban community health centers, and municipal hospitals may also be designated as the fever clinics. A medical officer at these fever clinics would suspect cases and refer the cases to the COVID care center, dedicated COVID health center, or the dedicated COVID hospital, depending on the clinical severity of the case. Mohalla clinics in Delhi were designated the role of these fever clinics. However, they were not exclusively fever clinics. They were dealing with all kinds of illnesses along with people who were coming with COVID-19 like symptoms. While the people were wary of visiting the OPDs of hospitals due to upsurge in the COVID-19 cases, these clinics served as a boon to the patients. They could provide services besides COVID-19 to people during the lockdown period and also help to reduce overcrowding at the secondary and the tertiary hospitals during the pandemic. The Delhi government assured that these clinics would remain open and healthcare services would continue to be provided to people. The doctors in the clinics were being trained to follow necessary guidelines while screening suspected patients and report all suspected cases to the designated hospitals. It was reported that in the initial phase of the lockdown, the doctor and the staff were unable to reach the clinics, and hence some clinics had to be remained shut in the month of March and April 2020. Later, however, it was ensured by the government that the clinics would remain open and services would be made available to people during the pandemic. Despite the shortage of protective gear, face shields, masks, and gloves, and delayed salaries as complained by the doctors, the staff continued to provide healthcare service to the patients. However, some changes had to be implemented, like blood and the urine sample. They could not be collected during the lockdown period, and people who required these kind of services were referred to the nearby dispensaries. These clinics could serve as effective platforms to create awareness about prevention and early detection of the COVID-19 cases. They could play a crucial role in fighting the pandemic owing to their ease of accessibility. The government had asked Mohalla clinics to distribute pamphlets to patients who visited the clinics, which included the essential do's and don'ts to prevent COVID. Apart from referring the suspected patients to the dispensaries or hospitals, there was little that the doctors in these clinics could do. To bring more people under the testing and detection net, the government announced that all the dispensaries and polyclinics would carry out rapid antigen test. In early September, okay, thank you for the presentation. Yes, in early September, as the COVID-19 cases were escalating rapidly, the Delhi government also proposed to increase the tests gradually. The possibility of selected Mohalla clinics being converted into temporary COVID-19 testing centers by shutting the general OPD services was being explored. It was declared that these clinics would be turned into COVID-19 testing centers as a tool to increase the number of patients that were being tested every day. Although it is argued that these clinics have not been used to their maximum capacity to mitigate the pandemic, yet it may be reaffirmed that these clinics have played a crucial role in the continuity of essential non-COVID healthcare services during the pandemic period, especially when the healthcare services in other levels of the health system were either temporarily suspended or inaccessible by non-COVID patients. It was later declared in November that these clinics, along with the polyclinics, dispensaries, and hospitals, would also be used for the vaccination purpose. The strategic role being played by these clinics and the promise that they hold for an efficient public healthcare system in Delhi goes beyond doubt. Despite initial setbacks, these clinics are efficiently helping to maintain the continuity of care in Delhi by treating COVID as well as non-COVID patients, by detecting the COVID patients and referring them to higher levels as and when required. The first phase of COVID-19 vaccination has started in India in January, and the Mohalla clinics are expected to play an important role in the inoculation drive as well. The next slide, please. The next one. Since this will not be the last pandemic, as it is being discussed, we must pool in all our resources to strengthen the healthcare infrastructure in such a manner that it is well equipped to face any health challenges which might happen in future, not only the current pandemic which we are facing. Since the Mohalla clinics are neighborhood clinics available within the locality, within very short distance from the residence of the people, these clinics have a greater reach to the huge dense population in Delhi and can thus be effective units in mitigating the pandemic and beyond it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Sonali, for presenting on Mohalla Clinic and its their relevance in pandemic situation. Let us now go on to Dr. Satyendra Saraswat, who will be presenting on bacterial isolation from respiratory samples. Dr. Saraswat, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Satinder. Are you able to share the screen?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am just trying to do it, and again, I'm also sharing with the mobile only. Just a
Okay.
second.
So if they okay, fine.
Is my screen visible?
No, screen is not visible.
Is it now, sir?
No, no.
It should be visible now, is it?
Mhm. No, not yet.
Not yet. I apologize. I would again. Could you please continue with the next speaker? By which time I would send you the mail.
No,
My presentation.
you are the last speaker, no?
Oh,
In this session, you are the last speaker.
it's just a moment.
Can you quickly send it by email and then continue with the presentation so that they will
Of
arrange
course,
to.
I can.
Yeah, please send
Of
it
course,
and
of
then
course.
start with
Right,
Dr.
sir.
Slide. Yeah.
Of course. Just a second. I'll just. The email has been sent. Could you please get it checked, sir?
You have sent the mail at eoffice.helpdesk@ifesindia.ac.in.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay, okay. I will just check.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In the meantime, you begin the presentation about, or oral this thing, so that they will receive it and they will open it and in the meantime.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, just continue, sir.
Okay, am I audible, sir? To all?
Please
Yeah,
continue.
you are
Please
audible.
continue.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, the chairperson, the presenters, and I'm so sorry for already delaying it. The topic for my presentation is bacterial isolation from respiratory samples during the SARS coronavirus 2 pandemic. Talking about the introduction, the advent of SARS coronavirus 2 pandemic in India and world brought everyone into an entirely different scenario, which world was not prepared for. As this was a new and developing infection, all the treatment therapies, remedies, and diagnostics were in a developing mode throughout. Microbiology played a crucial role as it was the basis of diagnostics in the latest pandemic with techniques including RT-PCR, CBNAT, TrueNAT, etc. A nasopharyngeal swab and/or an oropharyngeal swab are often recommended for screening or diagnosis of early infection, but invasive sampling of endotracheal aspirate and bronchoalveolar lavage fluid is another level of diagnostics. Also, there was an evolving pattern of organism recovery and their isolation from the hospitalized patients in relation to SARS coronavirus 2. The objective of this study is to compare the distribution of bacterial pathogens in the SARS coronavirus 2 negative and SARS coronavirus 2 positive patients, respectively, during the pandemic. Materials and methods. This was a prospective study. A cross
Next
section
slide.
one conduct.
Next slide, please.
This was a prospective cross sectional study conducted at UPMS Sefai, Etawah, Uttar Pradesh. In this study, endotracheal aspirates and bronchoalveolar lavage fluid specimens received in the microbiology department for culture and sensitivity were tested and assessed. It was conducted from March 2020 to August 2020. Next slide. Talking about the results and the critical findings we got in this study. If we talk about the SARS coronavirus 2 positive patients, overall the number of cases we concluded were about 76, out of whom 30 samples were those in which we isolated different bacterial organisms in the endotracheal aspirate and bronchoalveolar lavage fluid samples. The organisms or the isolates recovered from SARS coronavirus 2 positive patients were Staphylococcus aureus 40%, that is 12 out of 30, E. coli 8, that is 27% out of the total 30 isolates, Klebsiella pneumoniae 6 isolates out of 30, concluding 20%, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa total 4 isolates out of total 30, concluding to 13%. Likewise, in cases of SARS coronavirus 2 negative patients isolated from the endotracheal aspirate and bronchoalveolar lavage fluids were overall 46, out of which maximum isolates were of Acinetobacter baumannii, which were 27 in number, concluding to 59%, followed by Staph aureus, 8 isolates out of 46, concluding to 17%, Klebsiella pneumoniae, 6 isolates out of 46 isolates, concluding to 13%, E. coli 3, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa 2. Conclusively, when we compare these two tables, we can see the significant difference in the presence of the pathogen Acinetobacter baumannii, which is present in the cases of SARS coronavirus 2 negative patients and not in cases of SARS coronavirus positive patients. However, as when we discuss further, with the emerging pandemic of SARS coronavirus, next slide please, discussion. With the emerging pandemic of SARS coronavirus 2 infection worldwide, there was a wide array and widespread need of ventilators for the management of SARS coronavirus 2 patients. The extended requirement of ventilation was subdued and was arranged hitherto. The rising incidences of established pneumonia, thereby requiring ventilation, empirical antibiotic therapy, and invasive diagnostic investigations were a usual need. Since ventilator-associated pneumonia incidences are declining due to both ventilator-associated pneumonia care bundles and selective digestive tract decontamination, the bacterial findings in the respiratory specimens were of concern. Specimens like BAL and endotracheal aspirate were collected as indicated. Cultures yielded Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Staph aureus, E. coli, Klebsiella, and H. influenzae as the most frequently identified microorganisms. This was the finding in one of the studies done by Scholve et al. However, this is significantly different because the number of isolates that they had maximum were of the Pseudomonas aeruginosa, while we had the minimum number of Pseudomonas aeruginosa isolates in our study in both SARS coronavirus 2 positive patients as well as in the negative patients. The identified organisms varied in distribution in patients of positive as well as negative status patients. This distribution and variation needs to be studied further. However, next slide please. However, there are certain limitations to this study. Overall, we have been able to achieve only 76 isolates, out of which only 30 were the positive ones. As this is a smaller number of microbial isolates for a denomination to be concluded whether this bacterial presence is actually associated with the co-infection of SARS coronavirus 2 or not. Another limitation we had was the restriction to one center only. That means the samples were received from a specific small geographical area. And also we have only considered the bacterial isolates as a pathogen for respiratory infections, and we have not included the fungal and other virological agents which could also cause respiratory infections in specific pneumonia. Next slide please. To conclude, our study suggests an indicative picture of the bacterial growth which was favored by SARS coronavirus 2 infection. Also, the bacterial growth, in particular the Acinetobacter baumannii, the growth of which seems inhibited by the presence of SARS coronavirus 2 infection. However, the relationship between A. baumannii infection and SARS coronavirus 2 negativity needs a larger participant group and higher number of isolates to be established. Our study still indicates a possible relationship between the two, but conclusive evidence need to be studied on a larger group of populations for a proper establishment of a correlation. These are my references. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Satyendra. Now,
most welcome, sir.
Yeah, I would like to invite Dr. T.R. Dilip to discuss the papers in brief. Dr. Dilip, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to congratulate all the presenters for very interesting works which they are doing. So, coming to the first work on effect of pandemic on utilization of public healthcare services in Tamil Nadu by our colleagues from Gandhigram. I think they have, if you really look at the study, they have actually tried to look at the utilization of facilities, especially the primary and secondary care services, whether they have increased or decreased. And what they have found is that there is a 1/3 decline in the utilization of facilities. And another interesting thing which they found is there was not much of a decline for maternity care services. This, I think, is different from the next paper by William, where they have found a dip in utilization of maternity care services, like immunization and all. So that is one thing. Now, one more thing which I would like to add is that the utilization of overall utilization of public health facility is a function of availability of private healthcare facilities in that area. So we would, it would have been better if you have thrown some light on what is the overall utilization of the government facilities, how private facilities had fared during that time, some reflection on that. Similarly, whether there has been any positive impact on the health system because there was sudden influx of funds and all these things into the health system, whether there is any change, something related to the COVID, which I think is very less, but still you can highlight whether there is an improvement in infection control or something like that. So that is regarding the first paper. Now coming to the paper by William and colleagues on measuring health system resilience, it is like as usual he comes up with a very interesting analysis, and we always it is always like that whenever we see his analysis. So here what he have tried to see is he has looked at the HMIS indicators, basically coverage indicators, and tried to show how they have the states, Indian states, they have fared during this COVID time. So actually, resilience, if you see, it is little more than that, which William himself had mentioned in his paper. When you say resilience, we have to look at the adaptability of the system, how much funds have been pumped into the system, how the system utilized the new guidelines and all that was in place. Things like that, governance, some of the things also has to be included. I am sure he will be doing, adding this, some related indicators in the analysis and strengthen his paper further. So, if you add only the coverage indicators, then we are only measuring whether the health system got disrupted or not, whether there was a disruption in the health system. So, what the results also shows that the small states, they were in a better position to respond to the COVID, not COVID, but respond in terms of provisioning other non-COVID related healthcare services. I think, but on a overall, I would like to say that this is a very brave attempt, and I think he will improve it further. So that we actually know the resilience capacity of the various health systems across Indian states. Now, the third paper by Anand Bihari, that is on management of COVID patients, the people who came for testing in a hospital in Uttar Pradesh. That also involved a lot of data collection and all. They have, and the paper clearly shows what all in a hospital setting, what kind of studies we could do, what kind of the characteristics. He was able to clearly specify the characteristics of patients coming to the hospital, those infected. But some illustration on the characteristic of the patients who visited and the characteristic of the catchment area where the hospital is functioning. If you have given that, you would also, it will be interesting for the readers or whatever. Then one conclusion which I saw is diabetes is a cause of death during COVID. I don't know whether you can infer like that. Maybe people with the diabetes, they may be having some diabetes related complications, which ultimately might have led to their death or something. Maybe you can check the data, scrutinize the data a little more before arriving at that conclusion. The other paper on Mohalla clinics, that is primary healthcare centers are as the pivots of pandemic mitigation, a case of Mohalla clinics in Delhi. So this was a highly interesting work. As you all know, that Mohalla clinics, in the beginning, there was a lot of interest across researchers, and it received a lot of attention in terms of it is considered to be a game changer and all, especially in urban settings and all. But unfortunately, it did not pick up since 18 overall utilization levels were going down. So in this paper, Sonali is very positive about that, and they have played it seems they have played a considerable role, though numbers were not presented. It seems, according to Sonali, there is an increase in utilization. One thing I noted is that they also got transferred. The characteristics changed from a clinic to a COVID management center. So did their role change, which we can say whether it was actually a Mohalla clinic at the time of old Mohalla clinic at the time of pandemic, or it changed considerably like COVID servicing center or something like that. Now the last paper on bacterial infection from respiratory sample during SARS COVID pandemic. This is on a slightly different dimension, which we are not that familiar, but we could see that the authors, how they have used the opportunity and to compare the distribution of bacterial pathogens between COVID and COVID positive and negative patients. The positive, they had 30 positive patients and 46 negative patients, and has demonstrated the difference in various kind of bacteria, which we are not that familiar. I don't want to comment on it. It was a very interesting analysis. I suppose they will take this forward and come up with more interesting result. I think this may be a preliminary kind of thing.
Right, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. That is all. Thank you to all participants.
Yeah, thank you, Dr.
So much,
Dilip, for summarizing the papers also and also providing the comments. We have actually crossed the time, but we have one question that has come. That particular question is directed at Dr. William. It is related to what are the limitations of the data, particularly with respect to the Q1 data. So is it okay to compare that use the Q1 data to look at the resilience, or should we also look at the Q2 and Q3 data? So what would be the policy implications, and what would be? So can you please just respond to the question?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the question also. I think it is an important question. because HMIS
आ रहा
as
है,
such
सबक में
has
लगा दी है, बस
limitation.
बैठे नहीं है, बस इसको एक साइन करके आ रहा है। जी बस आ
Sorry.
गया।
Yeah. So I was
Yeah,
saying
I
that
think that,
HMIS definitely has its limitations, but I
ये भी
think
पढ़ने
over the
चलेगा।
years, when we are working with it, it has improved a lot in terms of its content, in terms of its quality also. And now most of the indicators, especially the primary healthcare related indicators, they are now much well represented. We were comparing Q1 only because it was available in the public domain. And now the HMIS website itself has been shifted and transferred to some other portal. So the Q2 and Q3 data will now be updated on the new portal, and it is now available not for any work right now. It's still under maintenance mode. So once that is available in the public domain, we will further look at that. So looking at resilience in terms of quarters is also important because Q1 was the pandemic time when the country was also in lockdown. And in my view, during that period, the maximum impact will be, I think, occurring. Q2 and Q3 will show that how quickly states are coming back to normalcy. So those information will be useful for that analysis. But I think given the limitation that some of the data is not available, and HMIS, the beauty is that you get more real-time data. So that is something like relatively a good advantage of using HMIS. But despite limitations, I think the patterns, etc., which comes from this is fairly consistent. So I think we should promote the use of HMIS also for analysis purposes because this will then allow us much good scope for regularly engaging with some of these topics. Thank you, sir.
yeah, thank you very much. So now we are coming to towards the end of the session. So the presenters across the five presenters, we have seen that the systems, health services systems have been disrupted and disturbed, and also we have seen that different population groups have been differently affected. And of course, there have been variations in the number of cases, and even now the variations is persisting, increase and decrease. Different sort of pressures on the health services systems is still happening, and the differential approaches have been tried. And to be more optimistic, the systems are becoming resilient and becoming more and more resilient, and are coming back to normalcy is what we are seeing, despite whatever our limitations have been. Though we got stuck in the beginning to grapple with the increasing kind of a number of cases, now we are coming back to normalcy and we are becoming more and more prepared. I think that the next session, which is going to be discussing the second part of the second session on healthcare utilization, will be discussing these topics further. So with this, I would like to end the session. I would like to thank all the presenters for their interesting presentations. Also I thank Dr. Sarang for who is the rapporteur, and Dr. Dilip who discussed, who was the discussant of the session, Dr. Rashmi who is the session organizer, and the e-office host who has been very supportive. And big thanks to IAPS and the conference organizers. So thank you all, and also the participants. Thank you very much. So with this, we will end the session. Thank you.
Thank you.